an all new IPL in the new normal. And of course, there are a lot of questions that you have, that I had, about how things are going to pan out in the next few weeks, what the pitches are like in the UAE, when will the Aussie and the English players be allowed to start playing their matches in the IPL. And of course, there's that one about Suresh Raina. Will he be allowed to play the IPL if he does want to come back and return for the CSK? Well, I'm going to try to answer most of those questions in this episode of Spotlight. First off, let's talk about the pitches in the UAE. Now remember, all these 8 franchises have built their teams in the auction last December according to their home pitches, their home grounds and the home advantage they had. All of that has been erased with the IPL now moving to the UAE, and matches being played just in 3 venues in Dubai, Sharjah and Abu Dhabi, where the pitches are expected to be on the slower side. Add to that the fact that all 60 matches will just be played on these 3 venues instead of the traditional 8 to 9 venues that IPL usually utilizes. Like last season, we had 9 venues hosting all the IPL matches, and this time round 60 matches will be played in just 3 venues. So of course the pitches will wear out as time goes on, as the tournament goes on. There will be a lot of wear and tear, and of course it will eventually end up benefiting the spinners even more. So they will be key. Now a look at some of the stats of T20 internationals played in the UAE shows that there have actually only been 2 centuries that have been scored in all those matches, and just that 6 200 plus scores have been scored in nearly 50 games. But of course, like Shikhar Dhawan said, this is almost the first time where pitches haven't had any matches played on them for more than 5-6 months. So there might be a surprise or two that the curators have in store for the players and all of us as well. And now of course the matches itself, the schedule was released very recently of the IPL, quite late actually, but well, it's out, and now that we're happy. The tournament opener, as everyone expected, will feature Mumbai Indians, the defending champions, and MS Dhoni's Chennai Super Kings. That's the match on the 19th of September, the one that kicks off season 13 of the IPL. A lot of questions about the timings of the tournament. Well, it's been moved to the UAE, but they're still catering to the Indian audience, so there will be matches at 7:30 p.m. IST, and on the 10 days that there are double headers, the afternoon game will be played at 3:30 p.m. IST. The tournament of course stretches 53 days with the final on 10th of November and the league stage wrapping up on the 3rd of November. Now of course the next big question of course is, when will the English and the Aussie players be allowed to play their first matches of the IPL? Now remember, 20th August onwards is when all the IPL teams started landing in the UAE, with the Indian players, the Kiwis and the South African and Chris Gayle joined soon after. And in the last week we've seen all the other players who were part of the Caribbean Premier League also join their respective team. That leaves only the Aussies and the English, quite a few important players actually, who haven't joined their teams. There's of course Jofra Archer, Steve Smith, David Warner. All these key players are still in England playing that ODI series. So they do land in the UAE on the 17th of September. 16th September is when they play the last ODI, and 17th is when they travel and land. What the team owners of course were saying is that since the Aussie and the English players are already part of a bio bubble in the UK, and they will be taking a private charter out and landing in the UAE, there will not be much outside exposure, and therefore all players should be allowed to straight away start training and practicing with their teams and playing their team's matches. However, that does have that little bit of a risk factor. So there's not been much official confirmation of this from the IPL just yet. The players will most likely have to serve a 6-day quarantine, like everybody else who has joined the IPL so far has had to do, because after all it is about the health and security of the entire tournament, and you don't really want to risk that for even your match winners, because there is a 60-day tournament to play. And after all that talk of player availability, there's that one big question, Suresh Raina. Now remember, some big names have already pulled out of this IPL. Suresh Raina, Harbhajan Singh, Lasith Malinga, Harbhajan and Malinga, actually all 3 of them said they were pulling out due to personal reasons. Now Mumbai Indians have already replaced Malinga in their squad and called in James Pattinson. Chennai Super Kings though have not replaced Harbhajan or Raina just yet. Both are key members of their team, but Raina, their number 3 batsman, their key batsman, was going to be a big part of their campaign this year. So the fact that they haven't replaced him does leave that door open for Raina to return. And in recent interviews, he has said that if things fall into place, he would like to come back to the IPL. He said, "You never know, I might just return to the team this season." But the bigger question is, will he be allowed to return to the team? Because in a certain publication, he said of his reason to return home to India from the IPL was that he was fearful for his health and his family's health, considering the positive cases that emerged in the Chennai Super Kings camp. But also in another interview, he said the reason for his return to India was the attack on his family in Punjab when they were sleeping on their terrace. Two of his family members have since succumbed to their injuries. Raina, of course, has been putting videos on social media where he's seen working out and training. So obviously, he wants to keep in top shape. That does give his fans some hope that he might just return and play this IPL, provided that the BCCI do allow him to return. And finally, the one question everybody has, but the answer nobody really can have for certain: who will win this IPL? So everyone's going to have their predictions. So I'm going to put my prediction in that hat as well, and I'm going to go with Chennai Super Kings. MS Dhoni's Chennai Super Kings. MS Dhoni, of course, retired from international cricket just last month on the 15th of August. In fact, he and Raina retired together. So there is very little that he has left to play, and we do know his love for Chennai and the dad's army, of course, with him this time. I do believe will do well, especially because we've talked about how important spinners will be in the tournament, and MS Dhoni famously has many spinners in his squad. And of course, they're also very experienced spinners. So as the conditions do keep changing because of just the 3 venues in the IPL, they will know how to adapt and change according to the demand of the pitches. Even the batsmen in the team are very senior players. Remember, Dad's army: Shane Watson, Faf du Plessis, Kedar Yadav, MS Dhoni himself. There's Raina if he returns. So there's a lot of key senior players who will know how to work the pitches, who will know how to change their game and adapt their game according to the pitches that are slightly more unknown to them compared to if they were playing at their own home grounds. So I do see Chennai Super Kings taking the title this year. It was a near miss for them last year. So it's Chennai Super Kings for me. Why don't you tell me in the comment section below who you think is going to win this IPL?